So let's look at the transactional perspective of the purchasing process. So the purchasing process is like this. First, we start off with a need. So it's the recognition of the need and the description of the need. Then we move over to supplier selection. We go through those, and then we do the transaction where we're actually making the purchase. Then we manage the relationship where we're managing performance and we're trying to improve performance. And then the cycle starts all over again. So let's start with need. Typically, somebody comes to us saying, I need this. There's either a purchasing requisition or a purchase order or something of that nature, depending on what your company calls it. So a requisition is not a purchase order. So a requisition is an internal request that's put into purchasing. So a purchase order is an external request that's placed with the supplier. So that's what you would do as a purchasing professional, sending out a purchase order. So make sure that your colleagues understand this also, and that they're not going out and sending out purchase orders to suppliers and causing what's called maverick spend, where they're spending company money when they're not authorized to do so. So let's take a look at what is on a purchase thing here. So what do we call this? To me, a purchase requisition. You have internal, like who's the vendor that you would recommend, and where do you want it shipped to, the items that are needed, and who's signing off on it. So most sections will have a specific person that's authorized to make these requisitions, or at least sign off on them. Usually it's somebody with a supervision capability. Might be a supervisor, a team lead, might be a manager. Make sure that this person is authorized. And then make sure that these purchases are standardized. You know exactly the quantity, a description, how much they say it should cost, or what the budget amount is for that purchase, and everything else that may be associated with it. Do they want a warranty? Do they want a service agreement? All these other things. Because if they don't tell you about this, how are you supposed to know unless you ask for it? You may need to help your internal customers to make sure that this information is accurate. Don't just have them come into you and say, I need this. Well, you need more information. And based on your experience, you can tell them exactly the information you're going to need. So once you get this requisition, well, we need to start looking at our suppliers. So we start with our supplier identification. We're going to start with all our potential suppliers. And then we're going to put them, and we're going to start funneling this down. We're going to go through an evaluation period where we're going to go looking at the suppliers. Then we'll have an approved list. These are the ones that we've already verified and vetted that can meet our needs. And then we'll have supplier performance monitoring after the purchase. And then we'll have our suppliers of choice, because these suppliers of choice meet our needs and perform to our standards. But how do you find your potential suppliers? Well, you can look at trade shows or trade publications. You can reach out to other industry contacts. Maybe your sales team knows, or just do a simple Google search. You might want to look on websites such as Alibaba or similar kind of websites to find manufacturers. And when you determine your qualifications, well, what are you going to do? Depending on your supplier and what you're sourcing, you might do a site visit, actually go and see their manufacturing facility. If you're going to be spending millions of dollars, it might be worth $1,000 or $2,000 to actually visit their site. Travel, hotel, food, all that other miscellaneous expenses, to actually go see and verify their qualifications. You're going to evaluate their financials. You're going to talk to maybe some of their customers and see how well that company does. So you're going to have to come up with a list of criteria on how to evaluate them. That way you have one standard that you're comparing everybody to. And have your colleagues help. You might be able to think of 5 things, but your colleagues might be able to fill up that list and maybe have 15 things at the end. And don't forget, you can reach out to other departments. You might reach out to finance because they can evaluate the financial side. You might reach out to your technical folks, like engineers, because they can evaluate the engineering aspect. You don't have to do it all yourself. So you'll have an approved list once you get through your evaluation, and you can send out, depending on what you're sourcing, either you're doing competitive bidding, where you're asking for suppliers to send in a bid, or you can do a reverse auction, so they can bid online in real time, or you can negotiate. So negotiation is probably the most complex and uncertain. So you want to narrow this down, if you're going to do negotiation, to a manageable number. Where competitive bidding, you can probably manage, depending on your team size, maybe let's say 20 bidders, and you can evaluate them all. But negotiation, you probably want to have a smaller list of maybe 5 to 7. That way you can actually dive in and negotiate. So once a contract is in place, you must continuously monitor your supplier and make sure the standards are maintained. That's where performance monitoring is essential. So let's look at the steps for selecting our supplier. So we have to make a list of all our potential suppliers. Then we're going to evaluate them. Are they capable of meeting our needs? And then we're going to do the approval and contracting. So this is a competitive bidding, reverse auction, negotiation, and then our performance monitoring. Make sure the suppliers live up to their promise. And we have to have a formal monitoring program. If you don't have one, consider starting one. That way your suppliers know what they're being rated on and how they're being monitored. So that way they can strive to meet the standard instead of just some arbitrary numbers that you come up with, where they are trying to shoot at a bullseye in the middle of the dark, where you can maybe give them a bullseye and tell them this is how to hit it. So the purchase order. So this is where you're going to send it to the company. This is for external use. So you can have a blanket purchase order. So you can have a reoccurring purchase that covers a long period of time. So I know the federal government uses this because I've done these. I've created these. And then we can do automated buying, used for routine times, eliminating the need for a PO entirely. So automated buying, what do you think that might be? That could be e-commerce, right? You go online, you do a couple clicks and you hit buy. That could be considered automated. Or you can have a reoccurring shipment under a blanket purchase order. All these things can help. But you have to keep on top of these. Make sure they don't get abused. So you have to place your purchase order with a supplier. So once they accept that purchase order, it is a legal contract. So our blanket purchase orders can cover a long period of time. It can be 2 months, it can be 10 years. And then you can use tools such as purchase cards or P cards to facilitate automatic buying for routine purchases. For example, office supplies are generally covered under a blanket purchase order. They just tell you, okay, you must get your office supplies from Staples. If you go to Staples, your organization might already have a blanket purchase order, and all you got to do is use your company credit card to buy, or use the company account and have it billed to the company. But you need to make sure you follow up with your suppliers to ensure the delivery occurs as agreed. And if you need to, speed up that delivery if it's necessary. Now, some companies have the policy where expedited shipping is absolutely not to be paid for. Well, you might if that's the case, you're going to have to think about what are you going to need and how long is it going to take to get to you? What is the lead time? If you need it in a week and you know it's going to take you 3 days to get, well, you probably want to order it today. That way you can have it in time. So make sure of the triple match. So if you have an issued purchase order that's accepted, make sure that that purchase order matches what you receive. And make sure that both of those match what the supplier has invoiced you for. So that's what they mean by the triple match. Make sure what you order is what you get and what you're being billed for. If it doesn't match, you need to talk to your supplier and figure out what's going on. So we have a couple other categories here. We have dock to stock suppliers. So we have certified suppliers whose deliveries can bypass incoming inspection and go straight to production or storage. These are suppliers that you trust and that you know that they are 100% accurate and you don't need to inspect them. Now they've earned this. It's not just given to them. So this could be part of your performance management where you've checked them so many times and they've been consistent quality, no errors, and so on and so forth. So you allow it, once it hits the dock, you allow it to go straight on without further inspection. That's one option your company can do if that supplier meets your standards that you set. And then we have our payment terms. So you can often negotiate good payment terms for your company. Have you ever seen or heard of net 30? Well, that means you need to pay the net balance within 30 days. And what if you can get 60 days or 90 days to pay? Or perhaps a discount for paying early? It could be a good possibility. So sometimes you'll see 2% net 30. So if you pay it before 30 days, you can take a 2% discount. Or you see 2% net 10. So if you pay the bill before 10 days, you can take 2% off it. But always remember, pay your bills on time. Because while you are evaluating your supplier is evaluating you as a customer. So the relationship, we have to maintain our relationship. We have to track and monitor our suppliers because they're doing the same thing to us. And we need to maintain a database for this information. We've got to collect this information. Ultimately, this is going to help improve your buyer and supplier relationship and help drive its continuous improvement. Because if you notice that things are not maintaining a certain level, you can talk to your supplier and say, hey, we've noticed this trend. Deliveries are arriving late. What's going on? And they may say something like, oh, we tried a new shipping company. Well, you can tell them, well, your shipping company is now, delivering later than we agreed. We need to fix this. Well, now it's on the supplier to try to resolve that. So that's just one example. So after the purchase order, we want to follow up. Keep in touch with our suppliers. And if we need to expedite a shipment for some reason, that's going to take extra effort and it's going to cost us money. We need to receive and inspect our goods. So we receive the invoice. Make sure that matches what we actually receive. So we have our receiving report. We need to make sure of that triple match. Purchase order to the invoice to the receiving report. Make sure everything matches. That we're billed for what we've received and that's what we've ordered. And pay our suppliers on time. We're going to earn our suppliers' loyalty by paying on time. And design a system that clears and submits invoices quickly. We don't want to have an invoice that just sits on somebody's desk waiting to be walked over to accounts payable. Come up with a system. Maybe 2 times a day, at lunchtime and at the end of the day, invoices are walked over to accounts payable so they're entered into the system and paid. Better yet, they're entered into a computer system right at the desk at the warehouse. That way the paperwork doesn't even have to go anywhere. Perhaps it's scanned to go with that transaction, and that way now it's on accounts payable to take care of it. All these things are possible. So we need to make sure that we maintain this transactional situation, our purchasing, because our customer is demanding quality from us, and we are the customer of somebody else. So why shouldn't our supplier demand that we pay on time, because we're expecting so much out of our supplier? We got to maintain that relationship, and the better we maintain that relationship, the possibility is there that we can get some better deals down the road because of our loyalty and our demonstrated care for that relationship.